Welcome to Best in Class. My name is AJ Madden. I have the honor and privilege of helping individuals and organizations become best in class at what they do. Today we have who I believe, well, also first time, three-time guest on Best in Class, someone who I believe is the world's number one expert on self-confidence, mental toughness, and winning, Dr. Jason Selk.
AJ, so good to be with you, my friend. You know I love spending time with you.
Oh, it's an honor. On a personal note, Jason's one of the greatest mentors I've ever had, inspirations, both personally and professionally. So, first challenge everyone listening. They say there's about half a dozen people you'll come across in your life who really make a positive difference on the direction. Now, Jason's one of those for me. So I challenge everyone to be intentional about finding your half dozen people who can really make a positive direction on your life, both personally and professionally. Now, a little bit about Dr. Selk. While serving as director of sports psychology for the St. Louis Cardinals, Dr. Selk helped the team win their first World Series in over 20 years. And in 2011, he assisted the Cardinals in the historic feat of winning their second world championship in a 6 year period. Over the last 20 years, Dr. Selk has written five best selling books and has become widely acclaimed as one of the most sought after keynote speakers in the country. His client list includes companies such as Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Edward Jones, Bacardi, Wells Fargo, and Enterprise. Dr. Selk has worked with over 40 Olympic gold medalists and all star athletes and coaches from the PGA, WPGA, NASCAR, NFL, NBA, WNBA, and NHL. He has been featured in Men's Health, USA Today, and on CNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, and ESPN. Now, the topic of today's discussion is I'll set this up for everyone listening. For the last several decades, Jason has had a front row seat to the world's best performers, the top 0.001%. Olympic gold medalists, Fortune 100 CEOs, and the highest levels of the US military. And today, Jason will teach us the 9 common mindsets and habits they share. And I compiled this from reading Jason's books, listening to interviews, and as well as everything Jason's personally taught me 101. I call this the 9 patterns of the highly successful. When I put it together, it was kind of mind blowing looking at the list because this is really just a special formula for greatness. So, Jason, can you talk about the first one on the list, your signature Relentless solution focus tool?
Yeah, but I want to go back to this is great, AJ, because we got an hour here, right? So we get to really take our time and talk about some things. I thought the half dozen, 6 people to really guide you in life. When I first heard you give that number, I thought, well, that feels kind of high. And then I did some math in my head, and I've got 5. Now I'm 55. So that means I got another one somewhere. Can't wait. And again, I'm sure it's plus or minus, but yeah, I do want to say that those 5 people have been wildly important. And I teach this to my children too, which to me, if I'm teaching it to my children, that is the highest level of, first of all, honoring channel capacity. And then probably not to mention, this is the most important information, but I'm really sensitive. That's what I mean by the channel capacity, not to overcoach with my children. I try really, really hard with my clients, but it feels like my children want less information than my clients do. So I'm super sensitive. But I've since they were little, I've said to them, you must always have someone who's older and has more experience that you feel comfortable being completely honest and open with. And I said, if it's me, great. If it's your mother, great. If it's a teacher at school, it doesn't matter who it is. But I do believe it's really important. And as I look at those 5 people, all of them have been measurably older than I am. And all of them have had undoubtedly more experience than I have as well. So I just think that was a really, really important tidbit to start. I don't think you should minimize that. And I hope people listening, if you're not consciously focused on having that person, and again, AJ said half dozen. For me, it was more of what's just one. And then those ones kind of started to combine and add up. One of them was my father, and I was very aware that he was going to be a mentor of mine even when I was really young. He's the most caring, the kindest person I ever met. So he was always running parallel with the others that kind of sometimes came in and out of my life. But anyway, great, great, great point, AJ, on the need for mentors in your life. To go back and answer the question. First of all, you're talking about 9 patterns. I don't know what those 9 patterns are. You've done more homework on my work than I have, which is honored. I'm honored that you have done that. RSF, I don't know where we're going to go from here because that is probably, I guess for me and my work, that's probably my number one claim to fame. And maybe that's not true because claim to fame means other people have really benefited from it. Yeah, maybe it is actually. Yeah, so RSF is probably the most powerful tool and technique that I teach. And let me just quickly underscore the importance of it. I don't know that at this pace we're not going to get through all 9. I don't think. We'll see. But so RSF is first the fundamental understanding that our brains, like it or not, are built in a way that it's completely normal for people, for all of us. I don't care who you are. All of our brains are built the same way, that we focus naturally on problems. It's called PCT, problem-centric thought. And it goes back to hundreds and hundreds of years ago when our species needed this for survival. We lived in a very unsafe time. And so our brain was built in a way that it was always focused on what are the threats out there? What are the potential threats to our existence? And not only do we have the initial recognition of the threat, but we have this thing in our brain called a caudate, which it actually loops around. So you might think about the threat. So imagine you're out in the wilderness and you're very aware of the lions, bears, and tigers out there. That's the initial threat your mind might have. And then you might forget about that for a moment because you're trying to build a shelter or you're trying to find some food. So you forget about it, but your brain is then built with this caudate to keep looping back to it. And that's really with all the potential threats, not even necessarily the ones that are for sure out there. But I saw this stat one time, it was crazy. I think it was 96% of the things people worry about will never in reality become true. And I think it's 97% actually. So we worry about so many things. We focus on so many potential problems and threats. And again, that's built into the need for our species for survival. If we didn't have this hundreds of years ago in the unsafe times we lived, we probably wouldn't be, well, we wouldn't be where we are as a species. We may not even be around as a species. Now, fast forward hundreds of years, and although that PCT threat back then was necessary for the advancement, for the survival of our species, it's now actually quite counterproductive for our levels of health, happiness, and performance or success. I'm going to say that again. PCT, although hundreds of years ago was necessary for our species to survive, is now counterproductive. It is actually causing health problems. It is definitely increasing levels of lowered happiness and, without a doubt, increasing underperformance. If our brains are focused on problems all the time, which we're built to do, we're not in the same moment able to focus on opportunities, improvements, ideas for success, dreaming bigger. really what positive psychology would tell you is essential for a person's health, happiness, and success. Your brain can only fully focus on one thing at a time. And you might have some multitaskers out there saying, oh, this guy doesn't know anything about multitasking. Of course, we can focus on more than one thing at a time. That's not what I said. What I'm saying is you cannot fully focus on more than one thing at a time. And greatness does not happen with distracted thought. It just doesn't, especially at high levels. It just really doesn't. Okay, so RSF is the knowledge of, okay, fundamentally speaking, what normal looks like is PCT. RSF is the opposite of PCT. Here's your definition. Within 60 seconds, replace all negative or PCT thought with solution focused thinking. And we want to do it within 60 seconds because there's a biological nature to this that as we focus on problems, our brain more and more kicks out or releases cortisol into the bloodstream. Cortisol, although very good for energy, it's necessary for fight or flight. And that's really kind of the foundation here that when cortisol starts pushing into the bloodstream at high levels, our brain gets confused into thinking we're moving into fight or flight. And what the brain does there is it disables itself from detailed thinking. So we're not able to think deeply about anything other than survival, honestly. And that's not good for high level performance these days. I mean, high level performance back then was stay alive. Staying alive was winning. Well, our standards of execution have increased quite a bit here. You know, standard of just staying alive is not really what the goal is any longer. It's all kinds of things in terms of healthy living, not to mention high level performance. All right, so the good news about RSF is although PCT is natural, cognitive neuroscience, neuroplasticity, we know that we can retrain the brain away from PCT into RSF so that instead of focusing on a problem and then looping, and staying in that problem loop, which is totally normal, we can have the initial thought of the problem and then we can redirect the caudate. So instead of looping about the problem, what we can do is we can say, okay, we got a problem here. What's one thing I can do right now that could make this better? Now, it's not a pep talk, but with training, and that's where you get things like mental workouts and success logs. It's what I would say the two most effective methods known to our species on training for mental toughness and RSF. I would say you could make an argument that RSF is mental toughness. But the mental workouts and success logs, much like going to a physical trainer, if I do the bicep curls, I can't stop the bicep from becoming stronger. Naturally speaking, the bicep is weak. Everyone is built the same way. When you're born, your bicep is weak. But with training, the bicep can become strong. With training, the mind can become strong. We just need to know what the proper level of training is. And again, mental workouts and success logs cause people to have that relentless solution focus mentality.
Well, I started with Relentless Solution Focus because I thought it might be the most important tool on the list of nine. Thank you for the thorough explanation, and it's definitely a life changer. I mean, all the clients I work with, the CEOs, law enforcement leadership founders, we read Relentless Solution Focus, and even when we're done, after all the books and tools that I share, that's usually the one that people say is the favorite one, their favorite, most useful. And I have two copies of the book on my shelf. It's the only book I have two copies of. It is the number one book I recommend and gift to others. So if you haven't read Relentless Solution Focus yet, the book, pick it up. The mental workouts in there, the success log is in there, the Relentless Solution Focus tool is in there, as well as some other great tools. So I would highly recommend. I'll put a link in the show notes. To that book. And honestly, in the book, it covers. I wasn't sure if we'd get through all nine today because it's an extensive list. So I'll try to prioritize which ones I would think you would pick as the most important. Uh, I would say the next one, prioritizing. Can you talk about prioritizing and why the best in the world are the best at prioritizing?
Yeah, I I've seen a greater focus on the skill of prioritizing. I like to call it a skill because most people don't think of it as a skill. It certainly is something you can work on and train and improve. And I believe over the last 5 to 8 years, there's been a really nice uptick in people recognizing that you can't get it all done. We live in this world these days where there's just no way you're going to get everything done. I remember when I first started my career, I had one client out my private practice. I had one client. And, then I had a list of to-dos, who knows, 5, 8 to-dos to try to build the practice, or, you have to pay rent, whatever, just all the to-dos. I would get all my to-dos done. If it was that one day a week where I was meeting with the client, I'd meet with that client, and it'd be 11:30, maybe noon. So there was a point in my life where I could get everything done. And then I got 2 clients, and then 4 clients. And at some point, fairly early in my career, I got to a point where I was having great difficulty getting everything done. And the first thing I want to say to people is that's a real mark of success, folks. And I think we have this tendency to let our to-do list overwhelm us and maybe even convince us that we're losing. Look, if you have a to-do list so large that you can't get it done, that means you're winning at a high level already. That's something to be really proud of. So some perspective.
Mm.
Now, most of the people who get to a certain level of success they're starting the day with a to-do list that there's just literally no chance they'll get done on a daily basis. Okay, so what that means is you must use the skill of prioritizing. Otherwise, you're busy but not productive. All right, I want to say that again. The difference between busy and productive is productive focuses on most important tasks. Busy focuses on how many can I get done tasks. I love, this is the second most impactful quote I've ever heard. Stephen Covey said this: the noise of the urgent creates the illusion of importance. I love that word illusion because it feels so real. I don't know if you've ever been to a magic show or an illusionist. I went to see Siegfried and Roy 20 years ago. You know who Siegfried and Roy?
Sure.
Remember, they were out in Vegas? And I'm sitting there. We had front row. I had some friends out there. They got us some front row seats, Siegfried and Roy. And these 2 magicians, illusionists, are about to cut this woman in half. And I remember thinking, wow, this looks real. They got her in a box. They got a saw. That saw looks really sharp. They're cutting her. They're doing. And I thought, well, where I'm from, I grew up in Iowa, and you're taught, look, if there's somebody in trouble, you jump in. You're jumping in, even if that means you're in danger. You jump in. And I thought, wow, I should jump on the stage and stop this. Now, I didn't actually. It was just kind of some mental gymnastics that was going on in my head. And I thought, it looks so real, but the reason I didn't jump on the stage is because I told myself this is an illusion. They're not actually cutting the young woman in half. And they didn't. The trick there is, I hate to give the trick away, but I found out years later, they're twins. There were 2 women that looked exactly the same. They put them both in the box. That's how they did it. Okay, so point is, if you're going to be good at prioritizing, you must be able to recognize the illusion of urgent. And it's very difficult. You've got these cell phones, and they buzz and they beep, and then you got people knocking on your door, and you got all kinds of things trying to get your attention. That stuff is typically the urgent stuff. And if you start doing the urgent stuff before the important stuff, and I know this sounds a little dramatic, but I'd tell you this is fairly close to 100% the truth. When a person starts in on those urgent tasks before they get their important tasks completed, it's almost impossible to do the important ones later in the day. But vice versa, if you can start with your most important, then it becomes actually easy to get the urgent ones done later in the day. Now, so that's the act of prioritizing. Look at the definition of prioritizing. It's the last word that people kind of miss out on. And by missing out on the last word, you really screw up the performance on it. Prioritizing, the act of doing what's most important first. All right, now let me run it through another wildly important concept. I believe as a performance coach, this is what I'm doing better than everybody else right now. Channel capacity. Channel capacity is the biological bandwidth of the human brain. Unfortunately, we like to believe we have so much more than we actually do. And the truth of the matter is, even for really smart, really successful people, the magic numbers with channel capacity are 3 and 1. I always have my clients do this weird thing. I know I've made you do it before. 3 and 1, that you can keep in working memory up to 3 things at a time. And then if it's anything new or you're trying to improve, then the focus has to shift down to 1. It's a really great exercise. It was one of the titles of the books that I wrote, Organize Tomorrow Today. All that means is today, before you finish the day, you write down for tomorrow what your 3 most important tasks are, and then you circle the one of the 3 that's most important. Right now, the reason I'm talking about prioritizing and channel capacity is people understand, yeah, we're supposed to prioritize, but what we don't have a great knowledge of is how much can you actually prioritize? It's not a trick question. It's science. You really shouldn't start your day with more than your 3 most important tasks figured out. And then, go back to your to-do list. So it's okay to have a to-do list of 20, 15, 100 items. I would just encourage you every day of the 20 items, figure out what your 3 most important one must are. And then you might early in the day, that's what I mean, is start the day by getting those done. Have a time block, 30 minutes. I call it ab time, abnormal time. 30 minutes where you are only allowed to work on your 3 most important tasks. And then if you get your 3 most important done, go back to that list of 15 and pick another 3 and 1. And just keep chipping away, but always honor channel capacity when using the skill of prioritizing, the magic number 3. Because what happens is people are trying to prioritize, but they're trying to prioritize 7, 8, 9, 10 things, and it's just impossible. When you overload channel capacity, it's like a juggler. I can juggle 3 balls, but you throw me a fourth and I drop all the balls. And here's when you know for sure you're dishonoring channel capacity. Have you ever forgotten something, AJ?
Sure.
What about this? Have you ever forgotten something you thought, I don't need to write this down. I don't need a reminder because this is too important. There's no possible way I'll forget.
Once a day or once a week?
Yeah. Sadly, it happened to me yesterday. I had a client, and it was my first conversation with the client. He's the CEO of pharmaceutical company, and we only had a certain amount of time, and there were some things that we didn't get tied up. And I said, I'm going to send you an email by the end of the day with a summary of what we just discussed, and I want to be clear. This is the one thing I want you to work on. And I told you before we started, all 3 of my children are in town. We went to the beach. It was just a nice, relaxing day. I forgot to send the dang email. I thought there's no way I'll forget. All I got to do is go to the beach. I knew I was going to be home by 6 o'clock. I forgot. And look, it's just dishonoring channel capacity. When you dishonor channel capacity, you forget. It's like dropping those balls. And it happens, these smartphones are making it so difficult for us to honor channel capacity on a regular basis. Anyway, again, long answer to a short question. What's the importance of prioritizing? I believe it's the most underrated skill of those who are most successful. And the big breakdown is people are trying to prioritize too much. And remember, you can really only prioritize 3 things. If you're going to have a meeting, you should never talk about more than 3 things. And I would tell you, have meetings focus solely on one thing. But if you have 3, break it down to 1 and make sure it's 1 takeaway, 1 action step for people.
Oh, excellent. This is easily one of the most important, powerful concepts I've learned from you over the years, is exactly as you just laid it out, and being very specific in terms of 3 most important and 1 must. every day. And I appreciate you just breaking that down because that actually covers process mentality. That was number three, winning game plan defined by process. I mean, these are daily process goals, these three most important tasks and one must, which is
Let,
a
let,
total no-brainer.
let's talk about that for a second, okay? Because if you were to ask me in the end, of all these nine concepts, what are you paid to do? Like what I think that the people I'm working with, we are winning at a higher level than I don't think, well, let's just put it this way. My people are very, very satisfied clients based on pure results. And I think I do a good job of not only providing the professional results, but I look at it through the holistic lens. So my people are happier, healthier, and much more successful. I'm not the cheapest coach in the country by far. So it is important to me to make sure people are seeing that financial return. And that's the most important thing right off the bat for me to get. And then I go to work on the personal stuff. But if you were to say, what in the end are you doing with your people that is causing them to win at such an elevated level? And there's no doubt in my mind, everything points to, you just use the term process mentality. It's a little bit different. I think people can get confused between prioritizing and the process mentality. They're very similar, but the process mentality is the same three most important daily.
Hmm.
I'm going to say that again. Okay, so there's two types of professionals. Type one, which I fall into, where every day my three most important activities are the same. And I'll just tell you, my three process goals, professionally speaking, are, and these they don't they don't change during the year. I would say almost never for me. And you could probably look at the last 20 years in business, and there's not much variance over the last 20 years. There is some. I think I'm in a little bit of a transition, going from a private practice to a consulting firm. So one of the process goals has changed, but this has been a process goal from day one in my practice. I call it 100% intensity 100% of the time. And that means when I'm on a coaching session with someone, they have 100% of my attention. There's no computer on in the background. If I'm having a bad day, if there's some personal problems I'm dealing with, none of that gets to be a part of the coaching session. I allow absolutely no excuse on that. It's 100% of the time, 100% intensity in those coaching sessions. And I define that. You say, well, that's kind of loose. Well, for me, it's not as loose as you might think. And I can prove to myself I'm doing that if there is no distraction. Like it would be easy to have a laptop open, or I've got a TV in my office. Sometimes when I'm doing a coaching session, I've got people playing sports that I'm working with on the TV. I can't be working with you and have them playing in the background. It's just not fair to you. Okay. And then for me, I measure it with, am I on every coaching session identifying one action step very clearly that if you put energy into this, you are going to see improvement in your life in that happiness, health, and success category. Okay. Second process goal. Right now, it's write 15 minutes at least three times a day. I'm just finishing my sixth book, and this one's taken me longer. It's been harder for whatever reason than the other five. So I'm kind of having to grind a little bit more than I'm used to. So I have a process goal. I have it blocked in the calendar, 15 minutes at least 3 days a week. I have to try to finish the book, and I'm real close now. So we're on the kind of final stretch. Third, and this is the one that hasn't necessarily been a process goal, but because of I'm changing the business now, my children are all coming in, and I've been sold out personally for 20 years. Well, now I've got three more clinicians coming in, so I need to create a different model of business. And so I reach out to three new business contacts daily. Today it was very simple. I have a former client, and I know he's struggling with something personally. And so I just sent him a 2 or 3 minute video reminding him, in the face of adversity, normal people move away from process, whereas in the face of adversity, the mentally tough have learned to lean more into process. And again, I'm just staying in touch with clients, letting them know I care about them, I think about them. I'm not asking for business. All I care about is bringing him value. But with my people, I think when I bring value, they typically want to send me business from other people and come back if they've taken a little break. Okay, those are my three process goals. But the difference between the process and what we talked about just a minute ago, which is, the three most important one must each day, is for me, and I'm this type 1 type of person, that my three most important are the same every day. For a financial advisor, I work with all kinds of financial advisors. It's typically the same three process goals every day. Make your three most important proactive contacts first 30 minutes of your day. Call it ab time, abnormal time. Two is organize tomorrow today. Write down the three names of the people you're going to reach out to tomorrow. And then the third thing is 3 days a week, 30 minutes cardio, heart rate 130. That's type 1. Type 1 of a business person is it's the same three every day for the most part. But there are all kinds of people I work with. A lot of times when you're in that C level, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, they have so many different things they're trying to stay on top of that the three most important change daily. And so for them, the process goals become, and I would tell you for my people that are in that situation, I still have three process goals. You'll see a little bit of variance here. One is organize tomorrow today. Today, before you leave, you identify what your three most important tasks are for tomorrow. Two is ab time. We talked about this earlier, that 30 minutes where you're only allowed to work on those three most important. And then three, you'll see a pattern here, 30 minutes cardio, heart rate 130 at least 3 times a week. It's the single healthiest thing any human being can do. You have to do that. But for them, it does change daily. So they use that OTT, that organize tomorrow today. Come up with your three today for tomorrow. That would be the second type of person. When you have so much variance in your workday, you may have to decide daily what those three most important are. But for most of us, type 1 business person, you have the same three most important every single day. And if you keep attacking those three, whether it be the variance, the type 2 person, or that they're the same every single day, if you can go 90%, you don't need to go 100%. But if you can go 90%, you almost can't lose. Now, in the sports world, you can go 100% on your process goals and still get your brains bashed in. That's one of the very, very difficult things about working in sport is it's just really hard to control results, especially at that professional, Olympic, and collegiate level. In the business world, it's just not nearly as hard. Truth of the matter is, when my clients get to that 90% for extended periods of time on their three most important, they're going to win the World Series every single year. And I say, prove it wrong. I know it sounds maybe too good to be true. First of all, it's a lot harder, as you know, than it sounds to do that. But if you can go 90% of your three most important activities daily, you're going to be very, very hard to beat. And I would just tell people, prove it wrong. Tell me it doesn't win you the World Series in your business if you can do that, extended periods of time, 6, 9, 12 months.
That's right. I can attest to it. It works.
Yeah.
It works. And
Well,
I'm
and,
type
and
1
look,
like
the
you.
final thing about it, Coach Wooden popularized this 50, 60 years ago, the process mentality, but science, it's clear. Science has confirmed empirically this process mentality is the single most effective way to control results. I didn't come up with the idea. For whatever reason, it resonated with me when I was studying Coach Wooden all those years ago. And science is science. And if this is the number one thing I can have my people do, it's harder than it sounds. But if I can get my people to do it with my help, everybody wins. People don't mind paying me my extremely high pricing for coaching.
Mm, that's right. The ROI is there. The return on investment's there. Results. And I think you said earlier, what one of the things that makes you the best in the world is channel capacity and honoring it. And you're one of the best at keeping it simple, which is another one on the list here. Number 4 was the best at keeping it simple. And what Jason's done with the previous tools is he's made the complex simple for us to understand and do. Crucial. So if you're in a leadership position, which everyone listening to this is in some way, shape, or form, the whole audience, you need to become the best at keeping it simple. You need to become a great coach as well, which Jason is. So listen to this. You can rewind it, listen to this episode again, listen to it from the rest of it moving forward here in the lens of being a great coach and a teacher and making the complex simple. Masters make the complex simple. The best of the best leaders are the best at making the complex simple so we can understand and then take that one simple action move forward as Jason described earlier. Let's see. Okay, there is overlap in these.
Well, let me talk about that, AJ, because there's a different level that we can talk about. I think we're on pace to get there. Hold on, I'm trying to. My phone's gonna die. I got a battery pack on it. Okay, just get it charged. So I was in New York City. This was December. I want to say it was December 18th, 2023. And I'd been hired. One of my clients is CEO of a Fortune 100. He's got 77,000 employees. Okay. And he wanted me to come in and work with his 11-person executive team. And it was a morning session. I had an hour. I think I was going to talk about RSF. I can't remember exactly what I was going to talk about because I shifted gears. Anyway, I went in and imagine it's December in New York City, right on Fifth Avenue, and had these great big floor to ceiling windows, kind of like this. This is Miami. We're not going to see snow here. At least I hope not. But this day, it's before the sun had come up. I think I had gotten there. I don't know. I want to say the meeting started at 7, and I'm there at 6:15. I was the first one there. They let me in the boardroom that we were going to use. The snow's falling. I mean, it was really beautiful. And it just so happens they had a company handbook sitting on this great big boardroom table. And I picked it up and I started thumbing through it. And I mean, it's this thick. And I'm thinking to myself, channel capacity, like what person can absorb this? And I thought, you know what? We need to shift gears. We need to talk about channel capacity and make sure that people are keeping it simple. And they came in and I said to my client, Dave, his name's Dave. I said, Dave, would you mind if we shift gears? He said, Jason, I trust you. We've been working together for a while. So he didn't need me to explain or justify. He said, I trust you. And I said, well, I came in this morning and I had I was holding this handbook and I dropped it on the table and it dropped in such a way that it was like a shotgun blast. You know, I couldn't have done it. If I tried it another 20 times, I couldn't have gotten it right, but it hit the table and just got everybody's attention. And I said, one of the biggest issues that people are seeing in business and in sport these days is we're dishonoring channel capacity. This handbook is, it's a clear example of that. So I said, let me ask a couple of questions. Now, remember, we got 11 people in this room. And this is the tip of the spear of a very, very successful company, billion-dollar company. I said, how many, I want you to write down, how many of you know what the one single most important result goal this company is trying to achieve this year is? Please write your answer down. There were 11 people there. How many different answers do you think we had? Think high, AJ.
11.
10, 10,
Oh, that was my second guess.
10. And then I said, okay, what percent of the 77,000 people, including yourselves, are showing up each day and getting done the one most important activity that will contribute to achieving what this company's most important goals are? Now, think low. What percent did they say? What percent are getting their one most important activity done each day? What do you think?
Oh, less than 20,
That's
probably.
well, it's 20%.
Okay.
And sadly to me, I mean, I'd been working with this guy for a couple of years, maybe longer even at that point. And I was somewhat aghast. I was somewhat embarrassed by the fact that what am I doing as a coach if this guy's employees are showing up and they're not getting their most important thing done more than 20% of the time? So we made a commitment to call it one must saturation. I do this now with a lot of different group consulting and teams that I work with, is we said, all right, for a year, me and everyone in leadership, every time you hear from me and every time you hear from a person in leadership, they must spend at least 30 seconds discussing the one must saturation. And all we're trying to do is give people clarity on this is our one most exciting result that we're going after as a team. So everybody in the company needs to know what is our one most exciting result goal we're going after as a team. And then everyone needs to know what their one most important daily task is to get the team closer to that one most important result. So we talked earlier about three most important one must, and then you did this, simplify. This is how you simplify process. This is how you simplify prioritizing. If I was leading a company or a team, there would be no doubt everyone in my company and everyone in my team would know what our one most important team goal is, and everyone would know for themselves. It's going to be different across the board for people. Some people may have the same, but it's going to be a lot of variance here. But everyone needs to know every day when I show up, the one most important thing I need to do to help this team win is, and everyone in that company is going to have time built early in the day. Maybe you can't all do it at the same time. Maybe you can, but I'm going to have it done as early as possible. A time block every day to get that one must done. If you want to simplify success and you're in a leadership position, start with that for yourself. Know what your one most important result goal is. Know your one must for you, and then try to get 100% saturation that everyone else on the team knows that and is getting that done on a daily basis too. You do that and you're going to like. Now, go back to this team. Remember, it's a Fortune 100. We attacked that thing for a year. 12 months later, stock price had doubled. That's more than $1 billion improvement in revenue. That's $1 billion. Trust me, they didn't pay me $1 billion for that advice. Next time I'll renegotiate, right? But you can see major, major gains by simplifying. One must saturation.
Oh, excellent story. Just excellent. If you're listening to this one, rewind that one and listen to it. I'm going to say 10 times because what
You
I can
don't
tell
need
you
to listen to
personally,
it, but listen to it 3 times.
at least three, thank you. Good
Go
catch.
3. 10 might be a bit.
What I can say is that what Jason laid out there, I've used personally and proudly to build two successful companies in two different industries. That process right there, it works. It just works. You just have to have the discipline to do it and the clarity to set those goals, honor channel capacity, process goals, be the best at keeping it simple. And this segues me into the number 9 on the list here. Uh, the goal to be the best in the world. And that also helped me build two, fortunately, very successful companies in two different industries because I began with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey said. The goal was to be the best in the world and not to beat on my chest and look down at others, but to go after my potential and have a clear aiming point and something to be proud of and be part of something that we could all be proud of. So, could you talk about that one? Aim to be the best in the world. So important.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you. I know for me, um, I think I stumbled on it personally, but it made such a big impact that, as you know, I talked to other people about this, that, again, this is one of those things that I've talked to my children about is pick one thing. And that's the part where be best in the world at something sounds for many people too big of a target. It's too overwhelming. How am I ever going to do that? And that's where just pick one thing. I mean, you're so kind when you refer to me. I've heard you say a number of times, you think I'm best in the world at X, and that's wonderful. And it doesn't matter if you ever achieve it. Like that's the thing that you're never gonna have that happen by accident. I ask people this all the time. I had the great pleasure with the Cardinals of being best in the world twice. I've worked with, I don't even know how many gold medalists in Olympics, and I'm an Olympic junkie. And so I've worked with a lot of people who, by definition, were literally best in the world that year. And I've never worked with any of them that were perfect. Not one, you look at the Cardinals, we didn't have any hitter that was hitting 1,000. We didn't have any pitcher that made it through the 7-game series with an ERA of 0. Any of the goal, I've worked in gymnastics. There was nobody that scored perfect tens on every event. There's nobody that scored perfectly on any event, outside of just the gymnastics. It's just nobody's ever been perfect. In fact, far from it. You don't have to be perfect to be best in the world, and you don't have to be best in the world at something really big. I liked how you said it today. I don't remember you saying that in the past, but when I set my sights, I said, I'm going to be the best in the world at helping people develop self-confidence. And I did that because the research, the literature was very, very strong that self-confidence is the number one variable for all human performance. It's a lot easier to be best in the world at helping someone with self-confidence than best in the world as a performance coach. Now, I'd love to, have my hat in the ring for best in the world as a performance coach. But the point I want to make is trying to be best in class will make you better. And you must start believing in your ability to be best in class, or you'll never have a chance of actually achieving that. I'm going to say one final thing. It's not a pep talk. I didn't say to myself, 25 years ago, I'm going to be the best in the world at this thing. Well, I did actually say that. But I then said, and this is what I need to do daily to give myself a chance. And that's where those process goals were. And for me, my number one process goal, I think you could probably figure it out, of the 3 I gave you, I've only ever had one always, every day of my career, every minute of my career, that 100% intensity, 100% of the time, measured by, am I giving someone a very clear action step every time we talk? One and only one that will help them get exactly where they've asked me to help them get. See, I know that if I do that, if I am fanatical, if I am nuts about that one thing, I'm going to give myself a chance. And you know what? If I'm the only one that ever thinks that I'm best in the world at that thing, who cares? I know it's made me better because I'm trying to be the best. It's not about the end result. It's about, are you nailing that process? And I learned that directly from Coach Wooden. He said, you quit worrying about results, and you're going to start seeing those results happen. Start worrying about what causes the results, and you'll love how this thing turns out. Let me tell this story, because this is probably better than anything we can talk about. I know we just have a couple minutes left, but I got to tell the Coach Wooden story. So my friend, I've written a couple of books with him, Tom Bartow, was literally best friends with Coach Wooden. It's how, in the end, I got to actually spend some time alone with Coach Wooden. Tom let me spend some time. We watched March Madness together. We went to dinner. I drove him to dinner. It was great. I remember I was getting on the highway. It's me and Coach Wooden. We're in LA, right? And LA traffic. And I'm not the best driver. And I can remember I'm pulling onto the interstate and I got one hand on the wheel, and the traffic, I look over, it's crazy. And I'm thinking, I got Coach Wooden. This is an American hero in my car. And if I get in an accident and cause any danger or harm to this man, it's going to be all over Sports Center tomorrow. I'll probably be arrested, and who knows what they'll do to me. So I remember putting both hands on the wheel. But anyway, I was sitting there with Coach Wooden, and we were just kind of talking about process. And I'm not starstruck very often. The only 2 people that had me starstruck were Willie Nelson and Coach Wooden. Anyway, I'm sitting with Coach Wooden, and I start, I kind of have a conversation with myself. I'm in awe, and I was kind of saying, come on, Selk, don't miss this opportunity. Like, ask some good questions. And I start talking about process, and he said this quote to me. He said, I've learned, I want to make sure I get it right. Hold on. He said, I've learned, in my years of teaching, I've learned Okay, hold on. Now I'm forgetting it for a second. Just give me a second.
Sure. And this is Coach John Wooden he's talking about. It's ESPN Coach of the Century.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is Coach Wood. He said, "Here's what it is: the truest definition of success is with effort and process." And then he paused. He had this blue cardigan, the powder blue UCLA cardigan sweater. He's sitting on an easy chair. I'm on the love seat next to him. We got March Madness on. I remember Cincinnati was playing somebody. We talked about Jerry Huggins was coaching Cincinnati. The truest sense of success is effort and process. Pause, little smile, and he looks over. He says, not with results.
Hmm.
Okay, now, then my friend Tom tells me the conversation he had with Coach Wooden about process. Tom had said to Coach Wooden, Tom used to coach college basketball. I said, Coach, if we're on the bench, we're in the middle of a game that's being played. What's the greatest coach of any sport of all time thinking about focusing on during the game? And Coach Wooden looked at Tom. He said, Tom, I'm watching to see if my guys are running their cuts in straight lines instead of banana patterns. And then he's silent. I didn't understand this or know this about Coach Wood until I spent a little time with him. He had a great sense of humor. He liked to kind of mess with people. Okay, he knew what he was capable of, and he kind of liked to mess with you. And Tom told me later, he said, if he was messing with you, that means he likes you. He had a little respect for you. So he says, Tom, I'm watching to see if my guys are making their cuts in straight lines, not running in banana patterns. And then he's silent. And he knows Tom's kind of stirring in his head. Tom thinks about it for a second, says, Coach, you mean to tell me the greatest basketball coach of all time, during the game, you're not worried about the scoreboard. You don't care who's winning or losing. You're watching to see if your guys are making cuts in straight lines? He said, Tom, let's be clear. Winning is important. And I know this, if my guys are running their cuts in straight lines, as opposed to banana patterns, remember, straight line, shortest distance between 2 points. If I'm going in straight lines, my guys are a little bit quicker at everything we do. And if we're a little bit quicker at everything we do, that scoreboard up there is going to take care of itself. And I just tell you, process is the key. And we live in a culture where all we want to do is think and measure each other with results. And you can do that, but get ready. You're going to get beat a lot. You better get used to losing, especially these days with those types of comparisons. You're going to get beat and life's going to be tough. If you quit worrying about what other people are thinking of you and what your numbers are looking like and start identifying what's my one must every day. What's my one must every day? You get that one must every day. That's when you get to stop worrying about the scoreboard because it's going to start taking care of itself.
That's a great place to end on right there. You are the best in the world at keeping it simple, which is on this list. I will put all nine in the show notes, and you can find these nine in by getting Jason's books. Okay, they're all in there. Relentless Solution Focus, Executive Toughness, 10-Minute Toughness, Organize Tomorrow Today. I'm forgetting the leadership book. Your leadership book. What was the title of that one?
Organize or lead any team to win.
Yes, thank you. So Jason's got five books. He's got a sixth coming out here. And I want to thank you for doing this. This is one of the longest interviews Jason's ever done. So I'm honored to have you on the show. I appreciate your friendship. My challenge to the listeners, like Jason said earlier, be intentional and be systematic and precise about those half a dozen people who will put your life in the best direction possible. I know the family has come into the business. So, and that's also my challenge to everybody listening. Be all you if you're a leader or a parent, your goal should be to become someone's hero. That should be your goal. Your kids' hero if you're a parent, your team members if you're a leader. You got to live in a way that you can become their hero, and that's in through your attitude, your effort, and your behavior in life. And you keep doing that every day, and you follow Jason's 9 tools and the ones he laid out today. You will become someone's hero. You can become your kid's hero, so they want to come into business with you and do business with you the rest of your life. in their life. So start today, in full, set those process goals, aim to be the best in the world at what you do, whatever it is. Do it with 100% intensity. Jason, where can people find your work and your family's work?
Well, let me first say this. You are a class act, my friend. You make other people better and you make other people feel really good about themselves. You should be really proud of that. You've been so kind to me, and I know you're now mentoring my son, which he very much appreciates. So thank you for what you're doing and the fact that you put these podcasts out. I mean, you're very passionate about making other people better, and I have great respect for that. Probably easiest place to find me is jasonselk.com. Again, if you're going to pick up a book, I would start with Relentless Solution Focus. If you like that one, if you're an athlete, 10-minute toughness. If you're coaching athletes, 10-minute toughness. That was my first one. It's on pace to be the best-selling sports psychology book of all time. If you're in leadership, I do think there's some really novel, unique ideas in Lead Any Team to Win. But AJ, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend, for what you do for myself, my son, and for all those others out there.
Honored to have you. Thanks for being one of those half dozen.
Keep attacking.
Will do. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Jason. Take care.